Okay, dear participants, you know that decision makers, especially in the policy level, they need a very comprehensive understanding of especially financial, ecological, and political risks associated with the climate change issues. So CORVI basically trying to remove the silos from decision making and providing a data-driven, city-specific risk profile, detailing the city's challenges across 10 risk categories. So that's why this study is very important for the coastal cities. Currently, they are operating in 11 cities around the globe, and Chittagong is one of them. However, Corby Bangladesh team under the Independent University of Bangladesh, especially Institute of Bay of Bengal Studies and Department of Economics, with the support of Stimson Center, Washington, D.C., and Ocean Policy Research Institute of Sasakawa Peace Foundation, Japan, started this research last year in Bangladesh. However, we are going to disseminate our findings, final findings, to you today. So, first of all, we have actually three presenters today. One is Corby Risk Profile Chattogram, a holistic city-based assessment of the climate risk facing Chittagong by Dr. Imadul Islam. He is research lead of this Corby research in Bangladesh and research fellow of Sasakawa Peace Foundation. Second presenter is comprehensive assessment of climate and ocean risk vulnerability index to analyze interactions among ecological, political, and financial factors by Santosh Kumar. He is also research fellow of Sasakawa Peace Foundation. And third presenter is Natalie, is research associate from Stimson Center, Washington, D.C. We have two discussants today, Professor Dr. Ghulam Matbur of Monmouth University, USA. He will be joining us online. And Mr. Zakir Hussain Khan, climate activist, chief executive of Change Initiative. However, I'm not making any delay, so with the permission of the chief guest, we are going to directly to presentation. As our chief guests have very limited time, so we'll be having our presentation first, and then, okay, sir, just one presentation, then we'll go to our chief guest. So first of all, may I request Dr. Imadul Islam to present his presentation.
Pointer. Honorable Chief Guest, His Excellency Mr. Abdul Mannan, Minister of Planning, and Honorable Vice Chancellor, sir, and respected participants and delegates. This is Dr. Imadul Islam, and welcome to my presentation on Corby Risk Profile, Chattogram, Bangladesh, a holistic city-based assessment of the climate risks facing Chattogram. So we know climate-induced disaster is one of the greatest challenges for the world today. No one denies the effect of climate-induced disaster as a threat for existing human civilizations. So IPCC special report focusing on ocean alerts that climate change will cause the ocean transitions to unprecedented condition over the 21st century. And coastal cities, particularly in developing countries, has been facing escalating climate and ocean risks, and thus risks-informed policy making are needed. In this response to increasing in response to increasing climate fragility risks in coastal developing countries, Ocean Policy Research Institute, the Sasakawa Peace Foundation has launched joint research project with Stimson Center, the policy think tank in Washington, D.C. in 2019. These joint projects aim to assess holistic climate and ocean risks to help coastal cities build resilience. So the Climate and Ocean Risk Vulnerability Index is a tool to identify the financial, political, and ecological risks from the climate change. And with CORVI decision makers and target their investment to build resilience where it matters cost. The expected benefits is it's the analytical tools, it's for the governments, it's for public and private investors, and it's for insurance industry. Uh, this is the evaluation process. Actually, indicator scores are developed by combining empirical and structured expert judgment. An expert service consists of question asking four factors: current, past, and expected trends, the magnitude of change, and the risks and the impact of risks of the coastal city. This is the sum of the example of questions. And without any delay, I would like to focus on our case study. This is the Chattogram city, Bangladesh. Uh, we know Bangladesh ranks seventh top disaster affected country in the world and second top in Asia in recent climate index in 2019. And coastal areas of Bangladesh comprises 32% of geographical land, which is highly vulnerable to climate-induced disaster. But we have a very big Bay of Bengal, combined population of 1.7 billion, and sustained GDP growth are currently in almost 3 trillion. But the dangers of the Bay of Bengal ecosystem are only new to beginning. To be understood, it is the hub of tropical cyclone and almost 13 million population under the threat of displacement due to sea level rise and other climate-induced disaster. So what is the expected outputs for Bangladesh perspective for this assessment? Actually, this is the CORVI assessment. It is developed and utilization for CORVI index is the context of a coastal city, Bangladesh, which will further use in the similar context in the other coastal city. This index also give the base data for, we have a very good Bangladesh Delta Plan 2100, and assist to public and private investors provide a detailed assessment of climate fragility risks designed to improve investment. This is actually short profile, we all know, so I would like to skip. The methodology, you know that this the assessment is international index, so we'd like to adjust with our context. So we did it phase by phase process. Firstly, we actually indicator adjustment. We tried to adjust with at least 10% of indicators out of 100. So second stage, we actually did the that we mentioned that is it's a combination of structure expert judgment and the literature. We compare the city for exploitative data, 13 South Asian coastal city, which is started in Bay of Bengal. And thirdly, we did the expert interview. It's almost 83. And we also done secondary method is called the in-depth interview, the 10. And we did the 2 validation workshop. One is in the Chattogram, and another is the National Independent University in this year in February. So this is actually our findings, the Chattogram risk profile, that since this index is the combination of 3 broad indicators: ecological risks, financial risks, and political risks, and each indicator is total is 10 another indicators, and which is combination of 98 indicators that we actually assessed. So out of 10 indicators, is the 9 indicators, is it under the medium to high risks? So in short, the CORVI analysis identified that city of Chattogram is at higher risk due to effects of climate change and its growing susceptibility, as well as significant economic factors related to ecological, financial, and political risks. So medium to high risk is, as I mentioned, that out of 10, it's 9 is under this category. So the ecological risks, this is, it should be mentioned that a total 36 indicators were observed under these ecological risks, of which 27 indicators is high and medium to high categories. But the excessive rainfall on rainy seasons and flooding, coastal erosion, landslide, and poor waste management has been creating the situation of the city dwellers. The risks are further compounded by the increasing extreme weather events and cyclone in the Bay of Bengal. And another most important is the lack of waste management, with waste regularly blocking the drainage point and contributing the urban flooding. So if we actually would like to key findings, the key message to policymaker, this is from our study. Actually, this index reflect to a growing urban populations, which is the last decade has grown in 4.3 million to 5.3 million in the Chattogram urban area, and going risks from extreme weather events, especially tropical cyclones and landslide, and vulnerable marine and coastal ecosystem that are treated by the habitat destruction, heavy metal pollution from shipbreaking industry, untreated wastewater, solid waste disposal in the Bay of Bengal, and large informal economy, which is that more than 80% employment in Chattogram is there in the employment informal economy, and these informal workers in the informal are largely excluded from social safety net programs, are moved to vulnerable to economic shocks, and fragmented governance is characterized by overlapping and intersecting mandates and management plans, which tends to slow decision making in inhabit effective maintenance. So these are actually these key findings also reflect to some of this picture. So as I mentioned that urban population has been increased very rapidly. So far, unplanned in urbanizations is occurred. This is one right picture is reflecting this. As I mentioned, the solid waste management. So you see the drain. Sorry. So this is sorry, I forgot it. So in the right side, actually, this is the current picture in some of the part downtown in Chittagong city was unplanned, totally unplanned, and also the drainage system is totally blocked. And in the right side is the shipbreaking yard, which actually polluted in our Bay of Bengal, and also that ecological risks that we mentioned, that landslide. This is some of picture, and also the heavy rain and our unplanned solid waste management. So even though we have some of very good intervention that by the government, so here is our excellency minister is here. Under his leadership, Bangladesh government did Bangladesh Delta Plan 2100. So we can hope for this. And also we have the National Adaptation Plan Bangladesh is newly adapted to 22-3 to 2015. And we have Mujib Climate Prosperity Plan, and we have Bangladesh Perspective Plan. So we have also some practical intervention that we found during our study. This is positive ecological infrastructure intervention. Almost 1,700 square kilometers of the Bay of Bengal adjacent to the Saint Martin Island is now called Saint Martin Main Protected Area. So yes, even though our score is very under risk in the ecological context, but maybe in the near future, this score would be really good. And government also constructed 15.2 kilometer long Chattogram main drive to protect the Chattogram shore so for coastal erosions. This is also such a good initiative that by the government. And also government took the cancel 10 coal-based power facilities or $12 billion for foreign investment. And transition to renewable energy, Bangladesh set a target 2041 to have 40% of its energy from renewable sources. So this is the some of the government intervention that done by government in the national level, which actually have maybe implication in the near future in the city level, but need to proper implementation and proper governments. So this is some recommendation from our study that we would like to uh, give the policymaker. The priority recommendation to build resilience. The coastal city of Chattogram is at substantial ecological risks that we found. Immediate measures from the policymakers are essential. Is to consider, improve, and expand flood adaptation and waste management, improve urban planning and invest of climate smart infrastructure, and develop a sustainable shoreline development strategy. So the government and stakeholders may urgently need to involve themselves identifying different coping strategies. Effective public waste management is essential. Cooperative conversation to the integrated ecosphere. Behavioral change of the concerned community also the important, and strong monitoring, good coordination between the two governance institution is called Chittagong Development Authority and Chittagong City Corporations. So for improve and expand flood adaptation and modern waste management, the city should take early plans, build modern drainage to ensure smooth water passes. And Chattogram is crucial for the country's economic stability, as well as South Asian countries of rely on it. So we should concern on it and enhance the climate adaptability key industries through regional cooperation. So we would like to promote the here is also because Chattogram is the hub for economic activity. So we will try to focus on the connectivity issue in the South Asia. So this is the shipping, tourist, ecoculture, mangrove, and agriculture industries are particularly sensitive to climate change, and these industries account for uh, these industries account for sizable share and country's GDP in Chattogram, Bangladesh. It is essential to safeguard this business from climate threats and guarantee that harmful environment effects on keep to a minimum. Finally, Bangladesh should play a leadership role to work close connection with the Bay of Bengal neighbors in drafting a framework agreement for governance. This is essentially important for commons and coastal cities. So we also propose the possible research that can be done as a IB as a research lead institutions based on the three risks as ecological risks, develop integrated climate, another vulnerability index, sustainable solution for city waste management, environmental impact assessment for shipbreaking yard, modern flood management, role of main protected areas, and impact of unplanned urbanization and deep sea fishing possibilities and challenges. And financial risks, so role of infrastructure development that is done by the Bay of Bengal Industrial Growth Bill, effects of Matabari Port and sustainable blue economy and challenges, and possibilities of ecotourism and challenges and possibilities of offshore wind technologies to ensure green energy dream to Bangladesh. And under the political risks, how to improve coordination among the city level two organization. We call this Chittagong City Corporation and CDA because we found is lack of coordination during the our assessment. So also the possibility of regional cooperation in the knowledge dissemination among Bay of Bengal littoral countries to promote the connectivity and resilience. So in conclusion, we know that this is our constitutional obligations because our constitution in 18 mentioned that article, the state shall endeavor to protect and improve the environment and to preserve and safeguard the natural resources, biodiversity, wetland, forest, and wildlife for the present and future citizens. So we should actually protect our city, coastal city, which is called our economic hub, not only for Bangladesh, it's for all of South Asian countries and other adjacent countries like Malaysia and Indonesia. So here is some validation workshop picture that we done with Chattogram City Corporations. And this is the portal. My next colleague also explained it, how the CORVI actually working on in the high level policy. And thank you so much for listening me and thank you so much. Definitely, sir. Yeah. Sir. Yes, sir. Definitely, sir.
So, as a person from not from this field, as a general audience, maybe your project does not require you to do so, but you have these Forum-CORVI partners in other countries, right? I would like to see, as an academic, you have this ecological risk, political risk, and financial risk, right?
Yes.
How do they compare with the 13 other partners? I think that's also very important.
Yeah, sir. Sir, in our next presentation, here is also this presentation. Yeah, so we have the comparison, and also in our report because this is just for presentation. Report is very big, so in the portal, all of comparison is there. So, sir.
If you want to publish it in an academic journal, you have to have
Yeah. So our methodology already published in Frontiers. So and report after today it will published in the journal Social Indicators. So what you questions is already inbuilt is there, and we are also, as I mentioned, this is international index. We also make comparison already done in other state, Fiji, then is Bangladesh, and also the what did I say in Philippines.
the audience need to know where we stand compared with other cities.
Yeah, so far I gave the portal. So my last presenter will introduce this portal, how it's work, what data is available is there, how can government collect this data and make its comparison. Thank you, sir. And thank you so much, sir, for hearing me. Yeah.
Okay. So thank you very much, Dr. Imadul Islam. It's a very nice presentation, a very brief presentation. However, before going to other presenters, we have actually our chief guest here. He has some important national appointment. So before other presentations, may I request our chief guest to say a few words in this? Before that, can you please remove the chair?
Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Of course, I'm highly honored. Matter of great pleasure for me personally to be present here this afternoon. Very select gathering of, would assume, scholars, would-be scholars, inquisitive people like me. So it's a beautiful gathering, and I'm grateful to Dr. Tariq Karim, one of our very senior diplomats, for asking me to be here this afternoon. And I see another one of our venerable diplomats, Hanan, Dr. Hanan here, and of course the distinguished Vice Chancellor and his faculty. I won't have much to say in terms of the subject under discussion. Naturally, I have no study on this subject. But as a curious onlooker and a stakeholder, because I'm a citizen of Bangladesh, we are literal to Bay of Bengal system. Bay of Bengal is our pond in a sense. It is our pond on which we live. We get sustenance from there. Our forefathers used to ship out of the coast and go to various places. Even now, it is in our literature, in our culture, in our songs, in so many ways. But those are bygone days. Now there's a need to look at Bay of Bengal from a different perspective altogether. Number one, because of this menace of what is called climate change, which is all over, it's happening. And one of the grounds on which climate change is playing out is Bay of Bengal. With the funnel shape, so the entire Indian Ocean fumes, sort of, in my own ordinary language, reaches at the peak where we live. So we get the bite and the hit. So that's very important for us for very survival. And of course, with the changing needs for larger population than before, aspire to live better, enjoy more comforts of life. So we are looking at every possible ways where we can draw, get more. And Bay of Bengal turns out to be a very important resource center for us. Fish, minerals, possibly gas or oil, whatever, trade routes in every possible way. So Bay of Bengal keeps coming into our discussion. And of course, what I see very important entities here, IUB of course is here hosting it. OPRI, I didn't know it before, Ocean Policy Research Institute. Dr. Tariq Karim is heading it. And we have what is called CORVI Index. That's must be a very highly technical thing. There is some benchmarks and indexes by which you can measure our risk factors in relation to our living on the coastlines of this our resource Bay of Bengal. So no doubt it's a very important subject for us in the government at this moment. We would like, as you said, holistic look. We would like a holistic development, total development. We would like our country to be developed economically, socially, politically, in every possible way. We have lost a lot of time, no doubt about that. We have to pick up the threads and move forward. That is our political goal. But of course, we need your support, no doubt. It's an understatement. Our Prime Minister or we in the political party, we are not researchers, so we don't have much knowledge about these very important matters. But having said that, I must also say that we are not a closed group of people who is running this country. We are open to all ideas, suggestions. I say it with responsibility. The person who leads us in this moment is a highly curious person, our Prime Minister Sheikh Hasina. She would like to know, like to hear, listen to you. And from our colleagues like me, we go about in various meetings, we sit quietly, gently, decently, I hope, and listen to you. And pick up your papers, carry home. Maybe, despite our very busy schedule, sometimes we read through particular aspects of the matter which immediately concerns us, which we can assimilate, we can digest. So, in that backdrop, it's a great opportunity for me to be here this morning, this afternoon, and to see that IUB and our OPRI and others are all at work. Uh, this is highly satisfying for me, and of course, uh, as a as a as a as a curious person, I would like to pick up various threads from your discussions here, and I'm sure, as you said, the distinguished vice chancellor was talking about a resolution or a book later on publication. I'm sure something will come out of these discussions, and this will be shared with us in due course. As Dr. Imdad mentioned in his very bold presentation, he was mentioning about a 100 years plan which we have launched. We read in the history books 100 years war between France and England. Now we have a 100-year plan. Bangladesh turns out to be one of the most planned countries in the world. It is not planned economy in the sense Soviet planning. No, not that. But we are a highly planned country, nevertheless. Sometimes, as an acolyte, I ask myself this question: how are we a planned economy when 90% of our market or economy is controlled by private sector? Why are we a planned economy? This question I ask myself. I don't have answer. I'm not an economist. But then maybe because I'm experienced in life, maybe because we started with zero resource in 1971. We had hardly anything in terms of basic infrastructure on which economies develop, flourish, on which the private sector, can find their feet and work and make, you know, make their contributions. So in that light, our founding fathers, our father of the nation, Bangabandhu Sheikh Mujib, and his cohorts, very distinguished people, freedom fighters, some of them great scholars of the time, they drew up this document, the Constitution of Bangladesh 1972, where it is very clearly mentioned, one of the earliest statements in human documents, I'm sure, about being very concerned about the ecology, concerned about the ecosystem, concerned about the environment. It is very clearly mentioned that we will develop, we will pursue road to development without causing harm or damage to Mother Nature, which is our legacy to our future generations. That our Constitution very clearly says, and we say it even now. We are one of the most active countries in the global climate forum. We participate and we do our bit. We are not mightily rich country. We know everyone knows about that, but we are committed. And many people ask, if we have very little resources, we have a climate fund of our own, which is a matter of surprise for many. The globally Big Bang will make this contribution, will make that contribution, will contribute this much of our resources so that we have a climate fund. Not much was done, I'm very sorry to say. Get down, Sharm el Sheikh, Rio, Cairo, Paris, COP this, COP that. We sit down together, we talk, big documents come out, big commitments come out, but in terms of real resources, which in terms of trillions, don't come about. But it's okay. We are not sort of unhappy or not very sort of what I would say shocked about this. This has happened in the past. Late Willy Brandt 0.7% of the GDP for the global development. This did not develop. Okay, let's not have gripe about that. The fact is, our climate is our climate. Our Bay of Bengal is our Bay of Bengal. Whatever happens, if the world survives, we survive. And we shore up our shores. We tie up our breaches. And we keep our resources, we keep our environment, we keep our ecology, we keep our rivers, and our charts, and our little hills, whatever we have for our future generations. So in that backdrop, I would once again, before I conclude my little intervention here, thank you for this initiative and disseminating your findings, which I have heard just now a bit. It will go further into discussions. I thank Professor Imdad, you and others for this hard work. And I, of course, thank Professor Vice Chancellor of our IUB and others for asking me to be here this afternoon, particularly Dr. Tariq Karim for asking me to be here this morning. Thank you very much for a very enjoyable afternoon. Joy Bangla, Joy Bangla.
Our honorable chief guest will leave us very shortly. So before that, we would like to take a small picture for 1 minute. So may I request all presenter come on the stage, and as well as also Ambassador Karim sir and our discussion. Before leaving our chief guest, just take a picture, please. Yeah, sir.
This would be this one. Exactly. I don't understand Bangladesh.
Start now.
Yeah, it's better. Thank you. It's okay. Oh, that's handled by them. I'm not handling. They are handling it. Okay. It's just not for my issues.
Okay, thank you. Okay, ladies and gentlemen, I think we should start our next presentation. We have our second presenter today. He is Dr. Shantosh Kumar Ranier. is a research fellow in the Ocean Policy Research Institute of Sasakawa Peace Foundation, Japan. He will be presenting on comprehensive assessment of climate and ocean risk vulnerability in analyzing interactions among ecological, political, and financial risk factors. May I request Dr. Santosh Kumar?
Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for your valuable time today to come and listen to my presentation about climate in CORVI indicator in Bangladesh. I would be presenting now about the interaction between different risk factors involved in CORVI. So basically, there are three domains in CORVI, which are political, ecological, and financial. Within those domains, we have 100 indicators, and those 100 indicators has been assessed by other questionnaires, survey questionnaires, and expert interviews. So let me introduce my topic for the presentation today. Is a comprehensive assessment of climate and Ocean Risk Vulnerability Index, CORVI, to analyze interactions among ecological, financial, and political risk factors. Basically, the overview of my presentation is we'll have a CORVI background, a bit of it, and then I'll talk about my study objectives and the methods and data I'll be obtaining and what are the statistical process I'll be using to assess the interactions and then possible outcomes and its implications. So for the background, CORVI is a decision support tool that provides comprehensive climate and ocean risk profile for coastal cities, as Chittagong. We have also in Fiji, Suva city, and in Philippines, Dagupan. So we have three cities basically from Ocean Policy Research Center. We have conducted surveys. And these indicators and these risk factors are very important. And we have to assess the multi-sectoral risk factors affecting coastal ecosystem. As we know, it's not one logged risk factor. It's like different sectors are interacting within them, and we have to understand those mechanisms and interactions among the indicators and risk factors. So basically, the importance of this study is to understand those interactions, mechanisms, magnitude of those interactions. Well, lack of evidence to promote intersectoral collaboration to formulate sustainable ocean policies, as we have observed, as my previous presenter has already mentioned, there has been lack of policies, and those lack of policies is due to lack of studies. We don't have enough studies to combine those risk factors, to bring those into a common platform so that we can understand how these risk factors are interacting within themselves, how they are associated, what is the correlation. We don't know until now, and it's a big issue. So this lack of studies has led to lack of intersectoral collaboration and policies. So CORVI indicator could serve as a bridge. This indicator could gap the bridge among these different coastal cities and stakeholders and sectors which we are lacking now. So basically, I'll talk about the CORVI framework first. As I have mentioned, okay, so this is the framework of CORVI. As I mentioned before, we have three domains: ecological risk factor, financial risk factors, and political risk factors. Within those three domains, we have 10 risk factors, which we can see ecosystem, we have economics, major industries, infrastructure, socio-demographic, governance, sociology, and all those things. And these all 10 risk factors have been measured by 100 indicators. So that's the basic framework of this. And they are rated on this score, like 0 to 2.5 is low score, medium risk is 2.51 to 5, 5 to 7.5 is medium high risk score, and 7.5 to 10 is highest risk score. That was the before background of the study shown from Chattogram. And actually, the risk profile is from the city in Bangladesh, Chattogram. So yeah, geographic risk factor, as you can see, 6.74, which is medium high risk. So these are the risk scores. So my study objective is to assess the interaction among these risk factors, these 10 risk factors, based on 100 indicators. So how those 100 indicators are interacting and how they are clustered within these 10 risk factors. If I suppose you understood my point. So how the 100 indicators are placed or clustered within the 10 risk factors. So analyze the interaction and evaluate the association among different CORVI indicators. And the second objective is to quantify the magnitude and direction of relationship among different risk factors included in CORVI. So for the method, we will use 100 indicators as used in CORVI and 10 risk factors that were used in the survey in 3 cities. 3 coastal cities were Chattogram, Bangladesh, Dagupan in Philippines, and Suva city in Fiji. Path analysis along with measurement model will be used to understand the basic preliminary path analysis of these indicators at first. I'll not go into the details because if someone has any questions, we can discuss about it after this presentation. Next, this is the modeling. So we'll use the structural equation modeling, which is one of the econometric modeling to assess the relationship and path of relationship among different factors. I'll use the Bayesian structural equation model to analyze the association and pathway of these risk factors. Bayesian structural equation modeling is fit for non-parametric data. As we know, the data is not normally distributed. Those are statistical terms. I'll not discuss about it. And risk factors will be treated as exogenous variable. That means the variables with us 10 risk factors are our main variables to be analyzed, to be clustered. And the endogenous variable, the dependent variables, will be the 100 risk factors or indicators, sorry, within those 10 risk factors. This is the basic framework, how it works. So imagine those rectangular boxes are indicators. The round box, a circle, or ovals are risk factors. So this will be how it will be analyzed, and path analysis will be conducted with measurement model. The expected outcome of my research study would be we can find out the magnitude of interactions among different indicators, as I already mentioned, and it will be observed. We can say how much it is related and what's the strength of the relationship. Direction is also important, how these are interacting, because it might be both way, it might be one way, it might be different, indirectly related or directly related. A prominent indicator substantially contributing to risk scores is expected to evaluate. Of course, those 10 risk factors are measured through 100 indicators, and scores of those 100 indicators determines the magnitude of risk factors. So we can find out which particular indicator or which set of particular indicators are substantially contributing to the high score of the risk factor. I'll repeat it again. The magnitude of particular indicator or set of indicators will determine some of the scores, or high or low magnitude of the scores of the risk factors. So we will try to assess that and we'll find out that. Now, importance of the study is it will provide strong evidence to formulate strategies and action plans for targeted specific risk factors in targeted cities, like in Chattogram or in Philippines somewhere. So the government policy stakeholders or the concerned bodies can definitely focus on which risk factors, which indicators are definitely troubling. And we can focus on those indicators and make the strategic plan and tailored action plans. Secondly, it will strengthen the validity of CORVI indicators. Of course, this is a survey, it's a cross-sectional survey. We need to strengthen the indicators, because expert interview is kind of based on experts' views, right? we need to scientifically standardize it. So this is one of the process of standardizing. Since we have 3 data points at hand, we also have several other data points from Stimson Center CORVI has conducted. We will try to mix up those all data points and try to use statistical analysis or machine learning, which is clustering, and see how the indicators are behaving, which will give the notion of standardization within those risk factors. So it will help to standardize CORVI indicators itself. Thirdly, could assist in intersectoral collaboration of sustainable solution as we'll notice which indicators are troublesome. Let's say indicators from major industries or indicator from sociology are troublesome. Those particular intersectoral policymakers or those concerned bodies can definitely collaborate with policymakers and have action plans together. And it will initiate for future studies focused on sustainability of ecosystem. Of course, we are dealing with a great grave of climate danger. Particularly ocean is really, really important for us, and we are seeing it with our first hand with this generation. We are seeing the effect, what will happen, and the precarious situation we may face in the future. So we need to act soon. So this will be one of the initiation for us to really deal and to make sure that we don't get into those grave consequences and act before we are late. Thank you very much for your attention. This is all for my presentation. Thank you. Yeah, surely. Yeah. Ah, thank you.
So we consider Bangladesh is a very resilient country and we claim it very proudly, okay? Whether your methodology incorporated the resilience aspect of the population and mass, either in coastal or in the big cities, as an integral part of your methodology to assess the vulnerability and the resilience to face it themselves, and also the future resilience in terms of inclusiveness, it would be much better. So are all these aspects are incorporated in your overall understanding, assessment, or analysis? I'm sure you did it. Did you? Thank you.
That was really, really amazing question. Really, really important question for the audience as well to understand how CORVI has been measured. Well, I'm not the one who was on the ground to measure the CORVI. I'm doing the standardization of CORVI indicators. Yeah. Actually, yeah. Well, I cannot say it 100% for the sure, but I guess the survey, when it was done based on the expert interviews, and I presume those questionnaire did contain about this kind of aspect of sustainability, resilience of local people or local community out there. I think some aspect of questionnaires were concerned and connected to that part of that issues, I guess. Yeah. BSM. So I use Bayesian because we don't have enough data point and our data is not normally distributed, since we cannot say that certain amount of interviews, experts actually answered the same. No, it didn't happen. I think expert in Suva city has different opinion than experts in Bangladesh, right? They have different perception and perceiving things. So they answer the questionnaire based on their ability to answer it, and they're based on their preconceived informations. So we cannot definitely say it's normalized data collection or normalized result what we received from the survey. So for that reason, I'm going to use Bayesian statistics, but it doesn't matter about whether the data is normally distributed or not. And secondly, we don't have enough data point. So lack of data leads to like false result, very high probability and chances. So I have to be careful about it. So Bayesian has one of the beautiful thing about it is we can have more priori generated through MCMC or different techniques, and then look at those priori distribution, how those priori distribution are definitely predicting the posterior distribution in the model. So the bit of technical things, but yeah, Bayesian is more fit for this kind of data sets. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Dr. Shantosh. It was actually a comparative discussion between Bangladesh, Fiji, and Philippines. There was a very good question by one of the diplomats, honorable diplomats. Just one important announcement before the next presenter. We had actually a welcome remark by Dr. Miku. So due to some technical reason, we couldn't connect her. So we'll go to her after the third presentation. Now, may I request Natalie to speak on her presentation. She is from Stimson Center, United States of America.
All right, good afternoon, everyone. My name is Natalie Fiertz, and I'm from the Stimson Center, which is a research institution in Washington, D.C. I manage our climate programs, including the Climate and Ocean Risk Vulnerability Project, which is known for short as CORVI. And I'm very pleased to be here with all of these distinguished speakers and guests talking about our assessment in Chattogram. So after the discussion of the more specific results from our assessment in Chattogram, I'm actually going to take a step back and talk about where our assessment in Chattogram fits into the larger CORVI project and where we've seen these assessments go after we've completed the assessment stage and how the results that we've determined get incorporated into planning and implementation processes. So first, to start at the highest level, what we heard at COP27 last month, and what we've heard for years at this point, is that there's an urgent need to strengthen climate resilience in least developed countries and other developing countries, and fulfill previous pledges to mobilize increased levels of climate finance. And we know that these countries are the least responsible for the climate crisis, but the most affected by the climate impacts, which are already today posing an urgent danger to the safety and security of residents and businesses. And I put this slide up, which we have as sort of the theoretical background to how CORVI was created, as a reminder that climate change is not monolithic, and it cannot be addressed through a single lens. Social, economic, environmental, and political issues from the land to the sea are all intertwined with the places and people who are affected and who need to plan for and build resilience in the face of the climate crisis. And we know that, according to the UN, we need to mobilize billions of dollars annually to fill this adaptation gap. And as their most recent report notes, this funding is still far from what is needed. And it calls for the increase of serious climate finance ambition. But what we've heard from funders is that what is needed is specific granular data at the local level. And we know that there is increasingly data available from hazards and from exposure, but what there is often not data available for is the specific vulnerability of the different places affected by the climate crisis. And so it is this gap that CORVI aims to fill, to provide that missing data, and therefore mobilize increased levels of climate finance. And CORVI aims to do this by looking at the vulnerability of the specific place that is being assessed through an integrated and holistic lens that looks at how social, economic, environmental, and political systems interact to produce climate risk. I know you've seen this wheel a few times now, but it's because it's foundational to how CORVI is framed. And CORVI has sort of two main purposes in its assessment process. The first one is to produce the new quantitative city-level data that answers that question, that need for more granular city-level vulnerability data, and assesses how environmental, economic, political, and social vulnerabilities are affecting climate risk. And the second part of CORVI that is important is that it brings together and integrates the data and information that already exists in many different places and brings it into one place in a more easily accessible format. So we pull together information from academic articles, from government reports, international assessments, and of course the key local experts that we talk to and survey, and bring all of that disparate data that exists into a single place to see how it all interacts and make it easily accessible to policymakers and other key stakeholders. So that's sort of how CORVI is envisioned at a high level. And now I want to shift to what happens after we've completed the assessment, as we have for Chattogram. So the first is that we put the data on the CORVI data portal, as my colleague mentioned. And the data portal that we have on our website has three main sections to it. It has an overview section, a city profile section, and a comparison section. And I'm going to walk through each briefly in turn. So this is what the overview section of the CORVI data portal looks like. And you can see that this includes a map of all the assessments that we've completed. And it also includes the risk scores at the category level on the right for each one of the 10 categories that CORVI covers. And this allows for a comparison across the cities of their various levels of risk across those 10 categories. Now the city profile section allows for drilling down into more specific data for a given city. So here's an example for a previous assessment that we've done in St. Lucia. And you can see that this section of the data portal allows one to look at this specific indicator scores within any one of the 10 categories that's available on the right, and look at which ones are higher risk and which ones are lower risk. It also provides a general overview of all of the scores. You can see on the lower right, that's all of the scores for the 100 indicators that are included within the assessment. And then finally, it includes a map of the study area that was considered for that specific assessment. And then finally, the third portion of the data portal is the comparison section. And this allows for the comparison between any two cities that we've completed an assessment for. And you can look at it at the category level, those 10 categories that CORVI consists of, or within any one of the 10 categories, you can compare at the specific indicator level what the risk scores are. And so this allows us to answer the question that was posed earlier about where, say, Chattogram's risks are higher than other cities that we've assessed, where they've specifically done a particularly good job of building resilience and may have lower levels of risk, and inform planning and implementation in that way. Now, we've completed CORVI, as mentioned, across 11 cities so far, from the Caribbean to the South Pacific, and you can see them here. And we're expecting to announce another 4 in the coming months, including one that was announced recently that will be done in Madagascar. And I'm just going to briefly walk through some of the ways that the CORVI findings have been used across some of these cities to get a sense of how the findings may be incorporated into planning and implementation here in Bangladesh. So one of the key actors, of course, is the governments in the city level governments and national level governments. So they can use CORVI to improve their national adaptation plans, to attract climate finance, and to devise innovative policy solutions, among many other uses. And other governments have done this in a number of ways. For example, the county government Mombasa, where we recently did an assessment last year, incorporated CORVI findings into its adaptation planning process. And this planning process was the first time that the city had actually incorporated climate change and adaptation into its city level process. And this was done in part thanks to our partners there, the Western Indian Ocean Marine Science Association, who has engaged with the city government of Mombasa in a very sustained manner to help them understand and incorporate the findings from that assessment. In Dar es Salaam, the CORVI findings informed the implementation planning around the Tanzania's National Climate Change Response Strategy between 2021 and 2026. In Kingston, Jamaica, after the CORVI assessment was completed, the government created a Ministry of Housing, Urban Renewal, Environment, and Climate Change, reflecting CORVI's prioritization of addressing issues in an integrated way. So this ministry brought together issues of housing and urban renewal, which are finance issues, and issues of environment and climate change, to break down those silos that previously existed between different parts of the government. In St. Lucia, many of the findings that we included in our CORVI assessment were reflected in the country financing roadmap that the country agreed to with the World Economic Forum. And finally, with our just completed assessment in St. Kitts, the Ministry of Environment and Climate Action, who was a key partner in that assessment, is already planning on using those findings to help attract additional climate finance. Another key audience for CORVI is multilateral funders. As we said, we hope to use CORVI and its findings to help mobilize additional climate finance and adaptation finance. So we've engaged consistently with a number of these funders, including the World Bank's Environment, Natural Resources, and Blue Economy Department and the Global Environment Facility. And they appreciate the value that CORVI brings in providing that city-level vulnerability data and also looking at climate risk in an integrated manner. And they are planning on using the CORVI approach and the CORVI findings to help inform how they fund adaptation around the world. And finally, the third type of audience that is sort of a key audience for CORVI is the private sector. So when CORVI was developed, actually one of our initial partners was AXA XL, now AXA Climate, which is one of the major insurance companies. And they appreciated having CORVI assess climate risk holistically to give them a better sense of where climate risk exists and what investments they need to make to reduce the costs of various natural disasters, and of course, to improve their business operations. And insurance is proving to be a key way that the world plans on mobilizing climate finance, as seen most recently at COP27 with the announcement of the Global Shield program. And we hope that CORVI can continue being a useful tool in that mobilization process. And we can't wait to see how CORVI gets incorporated into the planning and implementation processes to improve coastal climate resilience here in Bangladesh across these and other audiences. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Natalie, first for your presentation on CORVI from the center, Stinson Center. Now, actually, we have two discussants, Professor Dr. Ghulam Matbar from Monmouth University and Mr. Zakir Hussain. So before going to the discussant, we have Dr. Miko Amayakawa. She's in online now. So can we connect? Dr. Miko, we want to listen to you. She's actually a senior research fellow of Ocean Policy Research Institute, Tokyo, Japan. Can you connect Dr. Miko? She's not online? Can you please try again?
Finally.
Oh, yes.
Hello, good afternoon.
Please go on.
Thank you so much. Please accept my apologies for the technical problems that I faced. I'm now able to access to the microphones and video to the conference just now. So thank you so much for the technical team for solving this problem. Well, I was supposed to open this important gathering and also to welcome everyone. Well, I still would like to welcome all the distinguished speakers and guests, and I think all of you deserve acknowledgement of our appreciation. Well, I first would like to thank my good colleagues, the co-organizer of this event, the Center for Bay of Bengal Studies and the Department of Economics, Independent University, Bangladesh, Chattogram City Corporation, and Stimson Center, who have been our excellent colleagues, and this joint work has been a true partnership. I also would like to thank the Badipala Foundation, of course, for hosting this wonderful event. Although Honorable Minister has already left, I would very much like to express our heartfelt appreciation, Honorable Minister, for his guidance and leadership and the wise words that we heard at the beginning of this session. My appreciation also goes to Dr. Amir Mohammad Nasrallah, University of Chattogram, whom we have been collaborating for years. Representative from Chattogram City Corporation, Mr. Abdullah Al Omar, Professor Gholam Mathbor from Monmouth University, the United States, Mr. Zakil Hossein Khan, climate activist, chief executive of Change Initiative, Dr. Khaled Saifullah, assistant professor, Independent University, Bangladesh, and of course, Ms. Natalie Firetz, who have just made an excellent presentation, and my colleagues Amadul and Santosh. Yeah, we have a great team, and as I mentioned, the Bangladesh study is part of the 11 studies that Stimson and CORVI team, OPRI, have conducted so far, focusing on major cities in the region, and OPRI has been supporting studies in the 3 locations, including Chattogram, Suva, Fiji, Dagupan, Philippines, as Santosh and others have already presented. Well, the minister already mentioned that at the international forums, at UNFCCC COPs, there have been a lot of talk about lack of implementation. That is very true. However, I still would like to note some of the remarkable achievements which were agreed at the last COP in November, COP 27 in Egypt. I think one of the big win was an agreement for parties to establish new funding arrangement for loss and damage. And this is a result of decades of tough negotiations. There was never an appetite by developed states to link loss and damage with liabilities and funding. And finally, there was a decision to have a funding mechanism for this purpose. And I think that was quite a remarkable result. However, I think this is an indication of the fact that the negative impacts by global climate change around the world is so serious, including the events, the flash floods in the northeastern part of Bangladesh this year, and the terrible floods in Pakistan, which put the country, 1/3 of the country underwater. And since the Paris rulebook has already the negotiation of the rulebook has already been completed. The important thing is its implementation by countries and non-state actors. However, although over 80% of the countries have developed adaptation plans, strategies, and policies, there's a huge gap in terms of financing. According to the UNEP adaptation gap report, there is 5 to 10 times the lack of financing, which is estimated to be needed. So there should be a real action on the ground and necessary financing. There was also an agreement by parties and non-state actors at COP27 to work on a new adaptation agenda, which includes some important goals for coastal areas. And I would like to introduce a few of them. One is under this adaptation agenda, it's called the Sharm el Sheikh Adaptation Agenda. One is under this agenda for the ocean communities and actors to invest $4 billion to secure the future of 15 million hectares of mangroves globally through collective action on halting mangrove loss. The second is to halt loss, protect and restore seagrass, marshes, kelp forests to support people in temperate communities. Another one is for the coastal urban coastlines to be protected by gray and hybrid solutions. So these are global goals, but these have to be translated in the local context. And well, as it has been highlighted, Chattogram is a rapidly growing city with great potential, which is faced with a number of ecological risks, such as tropical cyclones, erratic rainfall, coastal erosions, rising sea levels, among others. And it has to provide for the increasing population in the city, and it has to be done within climate smart urban planning and necessary financing. So the cities are centers of compounded problems, but at the same time, it can be centers of solutions. And what is needed is a very good, assessment of risks and opportunities, and a collaboration like this in which academics, policymakers, NGOs, the private sector collaborate for priority actions. So I really hope that our joint effort, such as the CORVI study, will contribute to better understanding the risks and opportunities on site. And yeah, we look forward to our continued collaboration. And I would like to thank you again and again welcome all of you to this session. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Dr. Miko. Actually, Ocean Policy Research Institute, Tokyo, Japan, is a sister concern of Sasakawa Peace Foundation. So they have been working since long on ocean policy, especially climate change issues, sea level rise, and blue economy, and other things. So they have a great contribution not only to the developing countries, to all over the world. So thank you very much, Dr. Miko, for your nice deliberation. So, ladies and gentlemen, we have as chief guest Professor Dr. Niaz Ahmed Khan, Vice Chancellor of Independent University, Bangladesh. I must welcome, sir. And we have also, as a special guest from Chittagong City Corporation, architect Abdullah Al Umar. He's also present here. He's representing Honorable Mayor of Chittagong City Corporation. However, before going to our special guest, we have online Professor Dr. Ghulam Matbar from United States of America. He's supposed to be here physically, but unfortunately, due to his some of important assignment in Malaysia, he's in Malaysia now. So he is in online. And we have also another discussant here in presence. So may I request Professor Dr. Ghulam Matbar to have a discussion on this presentation. He is actually Bangladeshi-born American professor. He's working in Monmouth University, New Jersey. Sir.
Good afternoon. I'm actually very delighted to be with all of you, though I wanted to be in person, but because of my other assignment that Dr. Amin Nasrullah mentioned, I could not. But I think good that at least I can participate virtually. It's always good to see the good friends from Bangladesh. I must say a few names, particularly distinguished Vice Chancellor of IUB, who was my batchmate at the Harvard University's Management Development Program. I'm so happy to see him. Dr. Niaz Ahmed Khan's name even here at the University of Malaya. I'm actually currently as a senior visiting professor at the University of Malaya. And in fact, very soon, within 10 days, I'll be in Bangladesh to give keynote addresses to 3 international conferences. So let me, and always it's a pleasure and opportunity and fortune to see the new faces and meeting the new friends and new colleagues and new scholars. So I will focus on the presentation so far that we listened. First of all, let me start with Dr. Imadul Islam. And this is an area that is very near and dear to heart. I'm a Chatgaya. I am from Chittagong. I'm basically from Kutubdia Island. Throughout my whole academic and research career, all my work is on coastal community development. And in fact, Bangladesh maritime policy, I contributed a lot, particularly advocating for Bangladesh maritime policy. And finally, we had the maritime policy now. All my thesis, dissertation, research are in this area. As I said, that I am from Kutubdia Island. So let me focus on a very emerging, young, promising scholar, Dr. Ahmadul Islam, whom I know very well. His presentation particularly, of course, I think this is a presentation from a very credible institutions research, and I thank all these participating agencies, particularly contributing in this area. And in fact, also I must say that I'm actually a faculty advisor of the Advisory Council of the Urban Coast Institute at Monmouth University. So I'm still working in these coastal areas. Most important point I think Dr. Islam mentioned is the coastal resiliency of the people, institution, systems, and to enhance their capabilities. I think that's a very important thing. Another important point also Dr. Islam mentioned, the delta shape Bay of Bengal. I think that really contribute a lot. And also, it is an asset for the Chittagonian and for the country. Financial, I'm not going there, ecological things. And we know that sea level rise, greenhouse effects, the warming temperature. This just not only just within the territory of Bangladesh. Bangladesh is in the downstream, Nepal, Bhutan, India, they're in the upstream. So there are a lot of things, sediments rolling about, sea level rising up. I'm not just blaming South Asian countries, the whole world. I think Bangladesh is paying a big price. So all these sponsoring agencies for this seminar and this sustainable Chittagong cities particularly. I think this is something that we needed to do long time ago. And this is very much expediting now. I was president of the American Institute of Bangladesh Studies for 8 years, 2 terms. And in fact, it came to our radar as well. Everyone is now looking at the blue economy. Ocean is the future. That's what we can see there. Now everyone is jumping. 1991 cyclone, there was a UNICEF-sponsored team. The chief from the CDC, Center for Disease Control, I was one of the members. Out of 3 members, I was one of them. We look at actually the coastal region very specifically, particularly based on my dissertation and based on my research, and we did 2 months research in the 1991 cyclone. In this report also you mentioned about the Bangladesh cyclone, 138,000 people. That was the world disaster, the world, the devastating disaster after tsunami and all, before tsunami and all those. So I think what we found that people's resilience is important. We look at morbidity and mortality of Bangladesh cyclone of 1991, which is published in the World Health Organization Bulletin and also Disaster Journal of Manchester University. And we found some of the things actually came and the distinguished actually presenter mentioned here, but resiliency. And also I think another important point actually Dr. Islam mentioned about is coordination. Later on, Dr. Santosh and also I think other speakers also followed on that. Coordination, collaboration among and between the institutions. That is wastage. That is the wastage is happening because of lack of coordination. And I think also the Bay of Bengal, particularly for the Bangladesh government leadership, is crucial in this Bay of Bengal Blue Economy initiative. Ecotourism we talked about, but the most important point also I heard from Dr. Islam is the constitutional responsibility. And I think Honorable Minister Mannan mentioned about the political commitment. So constitutional responsibility and political commitment pivotal is the key. Without those two things, it's not going anywhere, particularly political commitment. So I'm glad to see that Honorable Planning Minister also came for this seminar. And also he mentioned about collaboration and coordination between among the institutions at various levels, including local self-government. Another point I would like to yet here is like, I think both presenters, first presenter, Dr. Islam and Dr. Santosh, mentioned about three factors: financial, ecological, and political. What I see the missing point here, later on, Ms. Natalie mentioned about this social side. I think social factors are very important, particularly people's life, livelihood, lived experiences, people's inclusiveness. The Ms. Natalie also emphasized on that. Those are very important factors. I know that this is a large cross-sectional survey, as you mentioned. It has many factors, 95 to 100 factors, as you mentioned, 3 domain, 10 risk factors. So environmental justice is a key. Environmental justice, I'm a social work professor. We talk about the environmental justice, assuring that all peoples are protected from environmental burdens. I think that's where somewhat we need to also focus on. So let me say a few words about Dr. Santosh's presentation. Another brilliant scholar seemed to be listening to his deliberation. I think interaction among political, financial, ecological element to assess the vulnerability. This is something actually reminded me. I was one of the participants of the second International Conference on Disaster Management organized by Professor Mohan Munasinghe, who won the Nobel Peace Prize with former Vice President Al Gore. He came up with wonderful tool, action impact matrix, looking at the vulnerability assessment to rebuild the lives in the post-disaster and pre-disaster. So this is something recalling my memories. I participated in that matrix. It was amazing matrix. With that, we can better respond what the communities need. So vulnerability, I think Dr. Santosh and also other speakers mentioned, that is very important. Multisectoral factors, interactions, mechanism, magnitude are important in order to measure the vulnerability. Again, he also emphasized on lack of cooperation, lack of policies, correlation, need to identify all those, the areas that we are lacking. Structural equation modeling suitable for non-parametrics data, which I agree, because if you do not have the normal curve, that is the way, and in fact, he recognized that. But cross-sectional survey, I think maybe if we go for later on, I'm sure the organization, maybe they have the plan. I don't want to judge them just based on listening to this few minutes presentation. Might give a slight different perspective, because other factors might come into our way if you go for the further studies, longitudinal. But social data also, Dr. Santosh emphasized for resiliency, giving people's voices, inclusiveness. Later on, actually, last presenter emphasized heavily on that. And this really what was a kind of, alert for me. Survey was based on expert interviews. How about the peoples are the experts? From my research from 1991 in the coastal regions of Bangladesh, I did actually both sides, Sundarban as well as, Kutubdia, Moshkali, Chakaria, Cox's Bazar, in that area. One thing we found that people, by and large, they have the lived experiences. They could tell us where we needed to have more emphasis in terms of building embankment, how high that could be. And in fact, they gave us wonderful perspectives on that. So I think that people should be, considered as an expert. It's not only the expert's views. I know that's what we do in the name of doing the survey and the research, particularly from a very deterministic perspective. I will say also a few words about Natalie, Fears, Stimson Institute, look at 11 cities, I think strengthening climate resiliency in developing countries. That's what I found very, because this is what we need to do in the developing countries. Climate change is not a monolithic crisis. That's a marvelous point. That holistic perspective is the important things that we need to look at from not from one lenses, from various perspectives. No data about vulnerability of the specific place. So this is what I think the main idea that particularly Chattogram, my city, is at risk, at danger. So I think that's what we definitely need to look at specific places, even maybe Cox's Bazar later on, or Khulna, other cities as well. Higher and lower risks need to be emphasized. I think in action impact metrics, Professor Mohan Morasinghe and we have looked at that, which also published in many different areas. I think greater picture for big scenario for big data. I think that's what she concluded. I think that was amazing. Climate change and adaptation need to be included in the city level planning and surrounding. I must add that surrounding, because you cannot separate when disaster comes. World Disaster Report 2008 said disaster do not discriminate. We do discriminate. It doesn't stay into one place. It goes to the surrounding. So I think in city planning, we need to look at surrounding a small town, even including local self-government planning. So my few words about Dr. Miko Makiwa, I think she has also mentioned about the increasing population, climate smart planning. I think that's the what we are looking at. Assessment of risk and opportunities, various stakeholders, collaboration, and better understanding in this regard. I think collaboration, cooperation between among the institution, and I would like to also emphasize includes the peoples. People's perspective need to be reflected in vulnerability assessment, rehabilitation, rebuilding lives. I think that's what is and to save the planet from this climate change crisis. So two things I would like to emphasize, which actually I published the theory based on my doctoral dissertation, social capital theory, particularly for the coastal communities. I also use the same framework that World Bank used, bonding, bridging, and linking to financial and other sectors for rehabilitation purposes and agencies, which is the focus here as well, is very important. But I think I went one step further, how to do the bonding, how to do the bridging, and how to be linking the communities and the peoples with the required appropriate needed institutions. And of course, people's participation matter to me. I think they're the best expert, to tell you frankly. We learn so much from the people, their indigenous knowledge, their perspectives, their persistent observation, living in those communities need to be strengthened and emphasized. I conclude here. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much, Professor Dr. Ghulam Matbur. It is a wonderful analysis and very in-depth discussion on the three presentations. Thank you very much for your kind presence once again. So we have our second discussant, Mr. Muhammad Zakir Hussain Khan. He is a climate activist. He is Chief Executive of Change Initiative. So you have 3 minutes.
Thank you very much. I'm really grateful to the Washington Forest Research Institute to invite me in such an esteemed discussions. Honorable Chief Guest, our very famous and intellectual Professor Nias sir is here, and distinguished speakers. And I would like to congratulate all the three esteemed speakers, especially it is a multi-country, I mean, this is a real exercise. I believe that multi-country, most developed country as well as the developing country expert combinations, which is really important in terms of the knowledge, exercise. Basically, I would not like to go detail about the presentations. Rather than, I believe this is the very base and foundations, and from the starting by the Dr. Imdad, he's very known to me for lots of a couple of years. I know his expertise and the capacity to deal with the complex issue. But what is important aspect is that in terms of the vulnerability assessment, what Natalia has already referred in her presentations, this is really important, the vulnerability assessment. Whenever it comes to any sort of the resource mobilization from international point of view or the national point of view, if we don't have a proper vulnerability assessment on the ground, actually there is a very little chance of accessing the climate finance from the international sources. And I can refer one example regarding the one project has been approved for the Bangladesh from the Green Climate Fund, has been right now implementing by the UNDP on the GCA project. Whenever it comes to the project proposal submission, they have submitted. When they have presented in the, there is a forum on the GCF, the governing body presentations. Then the first time the project proposal has been withdrawn by the UNDP only due to not having proper evidence on the local vulnerability. Why has been happened? And very particularly, when it comes to the evidence on the local level in the coastal areas, they referred all the salinity is been only due to the climate or impacts, that is sea level rise. But there are other factors also contributing on the sea level, on the salinity in the coastal region. This is the decline of the upstream water flow from the Ganges. And so whenever it comes to the sea level, the salinity issue, you have to particularly distinguish this is the really there is a vulnerability, especially in the coastal regions. This is only due to the sea level rise. Otherwise, it has been, that there is a evidence, a credibility is always at the risk. So, and that's why I'm saying that this exercise is really very much appreciated. But what is important is that, whatever it comes to the urban is always is a place for the lots of opportunities. At the same time, in terms of the risk, it is also the highest risk in the urban region, especially the Chittagong and we call is the capital of the commercial and investment. It has you cannot actually portray the overall risk with the such a the indexing, because there is a lots of multiplier effects. If any infrastructure has been damages, it relates with the international trade and other opportunities. But Chittagong, the vulnerability in terms of the Chittagong city, I could refer one thing is that you could in the next exercise you should focus on that the resource linkages, because the maximum rivers in the Chittagong regions is very much linked to the Chittagong hill tract, the flow falls, waterfalls. Thus, those waterfalls are actually in tremendously dangerous levels, dying out due to the watershed decline and the forest degradations. So recently, you see in the Halda rivers, in last year, the expected level of breeding was not happen. Only reason is that due to the lack of the water, inadequate water supply. So this sort of resource constraint, ultimately, if there is a resource constraint in the dying out the waterfalls in the Chittagong Hill, ultimately the Kornofuli rivers will be dying out in the coming days, and all the navigation it depends on the the Kornofuli rivers depend on the international trades. So there sort of linkages. The vulnerability should be also captured in the exercise in the coming days. That's my first point. Second point is that Chittagong city, we are actually expanding, but at what cost? It's a unabated the hill cutting of the Chittagong, the metropolitan area, and this is actually creating the whole vulnerability of the Chittagong's climate. Vulnerability has been multipliedly jeopardized due to the governance problems. So I have seen that in the assessment, the governance score is below 5. But I believe that that should be re-examined further, because the climate situation, especially in the LDC countries, have been multiplied jeopardized due to the poor or weak governance. I mean, when it comes to the coastal side, there is a polder, but if the allocation of the funds not been implemented properly and enforced properly in the ground, you cannot protect whatever the quality of the embankment is poor. You cannot say the people are really resilient. You see, that is a fundamental problems in the whole governance perspective should be equally, in some cases, prioritized rather than climate change vulnerability. Because country like Bangladesh and other resource constrained country, we should be focused on more, and prevention is better than cure in terms of any sort of the climate responses, because we have limited resources. So that's why I'm saying, in terms of the comparing the damage, loss and damage of Bangladesh, in terms of the data from the BBS, the 9 times higher in 2020 compared to the loss and damage in the 2015. But when it comes to the allocation of the climate-related expenditure only for the early warning systems, it has been only 0.3% of the whole funding of the climate-related expenditures is been investing for the early warning systems. So this is the fundamental challenge we have. It comes to the allocations. The priority is not the vulnerability, rather than the priority is the other than the vulnerability. So that should be, I believe this exercise should come up with the local adaptation planning rather than national adaptation planning. And the local resilience for the local community-led resilience is the key tool for whole situation. And for each community, there should have a community-led resilience planning. Otherwise, one size fits all, that should not be applicable for the whole cities and the urban areas. And finally, I would conclude my points that if we really keen to address the climate risk properly, we have to focus on the 3I in terms of the governance perspective. One is integrations of all the stakeholders, whole of the society perspective, and the whole of the governance should be taken into consideration. Otherwise, Chittagong Development Authority is planning such a way, Chittagong Metropolitan City Corporation is planning on the other way, and the Chittagong, the WASA is doing the other way around. So that is a serious problem. That's why people are coming up with the metropolitan government is another idea. I think Professor Niaz sir might focus on something like that. So this is fundamentally, the first I is the integration of all the perspective. And also the climate change into vulnerability should integration with the development planning. Otherwise, you cannot say this is the integrated approach you are, because development project is taking without any climate vulnerability assessment means is wastage of resources. And second I is that innovations. Bangladesh and the other LDC cannot expect that over the night the governance situation would be improved. So we have to come up with the governance innovations. So how can we ensure there is the proper utilization of the fund in terms of the proper planning of the project? And the last year I did a study with the Professor Mustaq Khan, how the adaptation project could be come up with the new governance innovations, the community more engaged with the community in the planning and design stages. And finally, final I is the for focus on the implementation. We always focus on the number of the climate finance, number of the project, but how far this implementation has been properly done in the ground, that's finally important. And this is also not only problem in the recipient country of the climate finance, but also the whole supply chain of the climate finance. You see, the problem is that GCF and other international funding entity focus on more on the allocations, but not the proper implementation of the fund at the ground. That is really important, because only nature-based or the solutions and the climate community-led resilience could be ensured if the fund really allocated, the allocated fund really implemented properly. Otherwise, it would be really challenging community. Thank you very much. I'm sorry for the getting more. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Mr. Zakir Hussain Khan, for your wonderful informations and deliberations. Yes, in our actual recommendation, we have included all those 3 I factors in this study. However, we are almost at the end of our presentation or this session. At this moment, may I request Professor Dr. Niaz Ahmed Khan, Honorable Pro Vice Chancellor. Yeah, he will come later. Okay, sir. May I request Architect Abdullah Al Umar, Chief City Planner of Chittagong City Corporation. He is representing Honorable Mayor to say a few words from Chittagong City Corporation.
Assalamu alaikum. Thank you for giving me chance from my organization, Chattogram City Corporation. It's a privilege for me. Thank you, our previous presenter, and last speaker, Mr. Zakir Hussain Khan. I fully agree with you. 3I and some important issue you have noticed. I recommend today's organizer to recommend to note it down, and it will be better for us um, for the next planning phases, implementation phases, and innovation phases. Thank you. Literally, I am not good at speaking. I came here to listen from you, just receiving your understanding. Thank you. Thank you, you all.
Now, may I request Professor Dr. Niaz Ahmed Khan to present his speech. He is also one of the advisor of our Bangladesh CORVI team.
Thank you, my friend, Professor Nasrullah. I stand before you for 3 reasons. First, to apologize. I should have been here from the beginning. I just couldn't make it because I had to face an emergency. So no excuses. I feel deeply honored to welcome you, each and all of you, to my university. I also stand here to show my solidarity to the very cause of this discussion. Resilient, littoral communities, and a way to come out with some form of a unified framework to face the climate-related risk and vulnerabilities that are posing increasingly greater threat for not just the communities, but the humanity at large. I'll also take this opportunity to recap some of the very important observations made by some of our friends. I couldn't listen to the presentations, but I actually gone through the materials, and most humbly to put, I was actually a member of the team, the CORVI team. And so my appreciation, just a quick word of acknowledgement to my friends in the Ocean Policy Research Institute, the Stimson Center, the very esteemed discussant, Professor Ghulam Matbar, who really doesn't need any introduction, and Mr. Zakir Hussain Khan, a climate activist. And as you've seen, let me just mention the 2 points that he made particularly relevant for our purpose. One is to seeing the big picture. He put this up as linking the resources, the resource linkages. And he gave a specific example from Chittagong Hill Tracts downwards to the Kornofuli to Chittagong. Put differently, it is important whenever we try to do this kind of risk assessment to see the big picture, the overall ecological and landscape-based approach rather than myopic bits and pieces. But you need to start with something small. That's what CORVI has done. We hope to scale this up at some level. And I also particularly like this idea focusing more squarely on the governance dynamics. We have tried to address some of these, but I think it always makes greater sense to get into some, delve into deeper of these dynamics. The particular point from Professor Madbor that I took note of is to have more focus on the sociological dimensions, the communities, indigenous knowledge, and I'm sure he has alluded to it, if not specifically mentioned. If we could do in the next round some more meaningful level of treatment of the social issues of equity and gender, I think that would make a broader sense to this whole exercise. Now, I'm just going to make two more general points about it. As researchers, we have to do research. That's how we make a living. But when you see some of your research actually have direct practical relevance, you feel good about it. It's very gratifying to see. I'm just holding these two important documents. I'm sure many of you have seen this. This one, received this morning. And for our friends who won't follow Bangla, this is the National Disaster Management Plan, 2021-2025, these two documents. And I was just kind of looking at the initial few pages, including the prologue, and I found immediate relevance to the CORVI exercise. In chapter 3 of the plan, it has a broad focus on identifying the risks and vulnerabilities. The chapter itself is actually called Risks and Vulnerabilities, littoral countries. So I feel that this exercise is not just living in the ivory tower of academia. It has come down to the level of practice where it actually has a practical meaning down at where the actual things are working out. So I think it has added a new dimension by this very practical significance of this research to move on, and I'm sure Opry and Stimson both would consider so as our friends nationally in Bangladesh. The other point I wanted to make, and I'm sure that some of the presenters must have made it, and I also acknowledge the name of Dr. Emadul Islam, my good friend, Dr. Santosh Kumar. As I said, I just missed on these presentations, but I acknowledge their contribution, and Natalie Ferris, the Stimson Center representative. I'm not sure whether they've made this point, but I'm quite hopeful that this point would go into our next round of research. We actually felt there is a capacity issue at nearly every institution. So not to undermine anyone, this is a practical need, whether it's my university, IUB or Dhaka, whether it's the Chattogram City Corporation, and by the way, deeply appreciated your presence, the representative from the City Corporation. You have been exceptionally helpful, and we acknowledge your support. So there is a clear capacity issue, a capacity gap nearly at every level. Now, there is also a tendency to either play it down or completely deny. The state of denial is problematic because if we don't, at the first place, acknowledge that there is a problem, then the next step, finding a solution, becomes irrelevant. So I feel we have to find a subtle way to make that case that there is a capacity gap, starting with myself, and we have to do something about it. Now, at the institutional level, we have actually found quite a bit of interest. We worked with at least 3 institutions in the course of this exercise. We found that there is a genuine interest in these type of exercises. And I feel, and again, I acknowledge the support we've received from the Minister of Planning, the Honorable Minister of Planning, Mr. Mannan, and he's one of those very rare politicians, very strongly grounded in academics. So we acknowledge his kind of this quality to be able to bridge between theory and practice. I feel there is a genuine political interest, at least in this particular exercise. So I just wanted to highlight these few points because I feel there is enough of a rationale and enough of a ground to be able to scale this exercise up to the next level and beyond. And you would hope that this partnership that we have developed with OPRI, with the Stimson Center, with the City Corporation, we have also discussed other major avenues, including the Mongla and Para Port. And we hope that this partnership can be developed further. And we have all sincere support that we can see and feel coming from both the academic and the practicing quarters. So I'm very hopeful about a possible expansion of this exercise. My appreciation for all my colleagues in IUB and in other universities, and some of you have traveled from all the way down, including Professor Nasrullah coming from Chittagong and other places. My appreciation for all of you who have very kindly participated in this discussion. And I understand that I'm standing between you and the sumptuous lunch waiting for you outside. So I'm going to stop now. Once again, my apologies. And once again, I'm truly gratified by your kind presence. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, sir. We are almost at the end of our presentation. Last but not least, may I request Dr. Khalid to say a few words.
Assalamu alaikum and good afternoon. I promise I will not take more than 2 minutes, right? Because we are running late for lunch, right? So it is actually my privilege to stand here and actually appreciate each and every one of you for the contribution that you have made for the CORVI studies, as well as for this session. So our Honorable Minister, M.A. Mannan, has left already, but we are very honored to have him here for even a very brief period of time. He had some emergency engagement. And we have here with us our special guest, Professor Niyaz Ahmed Khan, PhD, Honorable Vice Chancellor of IUB, as well as Architect Abdullah Al Omar, City Planner, Chittagong City Corporation. And thank you, sir, for your insight. Our sincere gratitude goes to the discussant, to our discussant, Dr. Ghulam Matabbar and Zakir Hossain Khan, for sharing your views as well as giving important feedbacks to the various CORVI studies, not only for the Chittagong City, but for beyond that. And so thank you for that. Also, 3 presenters, thank you, Dr. Imadul Islam, Dr. Shantish Kumar, as well as Natalie, for sharing your work. And I'm sure the ideas and the discussion we had today, it will actually be a roadmap for future research work as well as further discussion among various stakeholders. And I would like to take this opportunity to actually thank our experts. Some of our experts are here. We had actually 83 experts who we actually talked to for our CORVI research studies for their time and the valuable insight they have given us, as well as Chittagong City Corporation and the Chittagong Development Authorities. They have given us enough time. Whenever we contacted them, they actually gave us time, whether it is physically or it was virtual. So I would like to thank them also. And I would like to thank our colleagues from OPRI. Dr. Miku is here with us online, as well as the colleagues from Stimson Center for technical support as well as for financial support. Without their support, we won't be able to do this study. And so I'm thanking them as well. And last but not least, I would like to thank all the participants, students, and my fellow colleagues for being here. And also, I would like to thank Center for Bay of Bengal Studies, IUB, as well as Bali Para Foundation for organizing this event and this session. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Dr. Khaled Saifullah, for your vote of thanks. We are, at the end of our session. Just a few words before concluding regarding CORVI Bangladesh team. Actually, it was a team formed in Bangladesh to study Chattogram city as a coastal city. So we had actually advisors like Professor Dr. Khan and Ambassador Tariq Karim. And in the team, we had Dr. Ramadul, Dr. Saifullah Khaled, and also Dr. Shahriar Kabir of Economics Department, and from Chittagong University, this is Amir Muhammad Nasrullah. So last 1 year, actually, we had this study and got this final, output that we disseminated to you. So tomorrow we have 3 other sessions in Chattogram, especially with Chittagong Development Authority, with the chairman, and also with the mayor in Chittagong City Corporation and local NGOs in Chittagong. So actually, last, I want to say that actually, as Chittagong is the hub of all economic activities in Bangladesh, so saving Chittagong is saving the country. So that's why I hope that this, information findings will contribute to the development of future projects or future planning, future policies to the decision making of Bangladesh. Thank you very much. I would like all of you to have lunch with us. Thank you. Assalamu alaikum and good afternoon.